Hey everyone, it's ENDYMION, and recently I've been talking to some sources about Assassin's Creed Shadows behind the scenes and a lot of things that are happening at Ubisoft and even other game studios as well. And the things that I've been getting told are pretty damning. So with their consent, I've been able to make this video and present you the various things that they've told me. I vetted these sources and they have indeed worked with Ubisoft for many years as well as other game studios as well. They've even told me things about games that aren't released yet that I actually can't even say, because I think if I do that, assassins from other studios will probably barrel roll through my window and then take me out John Wick style. So anyways, I will spend this video explaining the absolute state of Assassin's Creed Shadows, Star Wars Outlaws apparently being referred to as Red Dead Star Wars internally and more. And there's other stuff that you just gotta hear because a lot of this is just absolutely insane. So in my previous video, I explained that Paul Tassi of Forbes said in his article about the Ubisoft implosion that those extra months have been given to possibly reduce or even completely remove Yasuke from Assassin's Creed Shadows. My source told me, however, that they heard February 2025 is simply a placeholder release date as of now. Apparently, this is because Ubisoft is scrambling and they need certain key talent in order to assist on a Q2 game release. Which, if you don't know what that means, there's 4 quarters to a calendar year, so Q2 means Ubisoft has something that they think will hit that is coming out later in the year that they need help on. So because talent at the studio is working to make that future release come out more smoothly, Shadows is not being given the extra hands it kinda needs right now, so like I said, the release date may actually be pushed back even further. I was also told when they originally saw the game there was indeed a male Japanese protagonist with their own finalized art and even animations. They don't know if this character will be reintroduced in order to replace Yasuke, but they are skeptical that Ubisoft will actually remove Yasuke altogether due to the whole political, backlash they'll get from journalists and so on. They did say that the game's first act is heavily story-driven until it eventually opens up to your more traditional open-world Ubisoft experience. And that the big hurdle there, if they were to remove Yasuke, would be to practically change almost everything about Act 1, so to speak, if they were to remove the character entirely. So could they remove Yasuke with this already done but thrown aside Japanese character? It's a big maybe, but they said that they weren't sure of it yet. They also told me they heard rumblings that Sweet Baby Inc. may have had a hand in Shadows, but they can't confirm that 100% yet, so take that allegation with a huge big fat shot of skepticism right now, okay? But like I was saying, the game did first include a male Japanese main character, but they were swapped sometime during 2020, according to my source for Yasuke instead. So this is where stuff gets really weird and pandering, but I asked them what influenced Ubisoft to make the change that they did from the original Japanese male character to now Yasuke. They said that Ubisoft was heavily influenced by the socio-political events of the time, with stuff like, and no I'm not kidding, George Floyd dying, the riots, and Black Lives Matter exploding in support. So don't shoot the messenger here, but this is what I was told by this source, but Ubisoft may have opted to include Yasuke in order to pander to identity politics because of Black Lives Matter. I know, it's a hell of a statement. Again, they said they cannot confirm 100%, but they did say that they have seen the original Japanese hero character, and that they were actually mortified when they saw Yasuke for the first time in the game. Apparently, one of the videos that Ubisoft was showing of Yasuke originally, and no I'm not kidding you, was Yasuke destroying a grocery store property with his weapons in order to show the game's physics engine. But the source said that they couldn't believe how tone-deaf Ubisoft was, considering they were literally showing a black guy in a foreign country destroying property. This lack of knowing what to do with Shadows was all over the game, and like I said, Yasuke was inserted for identity political reasons. The source also said that Ubisoft was horrified by the response to Yasuke from the fandom, and they actually thought including him would be a really big selling point for the game. They apparently believed by inserting Yasuke that they could garner and pander to the modern audience, which is cringe. But yes, these studios are still trying to pander to these groups that, like I've said so many times, They literally do not exist. Another very damning allegation I was told by sources was that compared to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, that Shadows has only about 7% the pre-order numbers of Valhalla during the same time period. Yes, you heard that right, guys. 7% of Valhalla. So that other reports where Stuttering Craig, a side-scroller, said Shadows only had about 800 physical pre-orders over about 900 plus stores in America, he is telling the truth, my friends. So it's pretty evident that Ubisoft delayed the game not only due to backlash, but because they were getting next to nothing pre-order wise when compared to Valhalla, or even Mirage even. I don't have exact concrete numbers on Valhalla's pre-orders prior to launch, however, remember that Valhalla is Ubisoft's second most profitable game of all time, and it's only beaten by Rainbow Six Siege. So Shadows currently, as of the making of this video, or like a month ago I guess, has about 7% of that, if you can believe it. I was also told that Ubisoft has made Shadows the most microtransaction-filled experience from launch compared to any other previous title that they have ever released in the franchise. So we're talking loads of DLC armor, weapons, mounts, trinkets, etc. for both characters, all for premium costs. Which of course is nonsense because the game is full price at launch, but they actually thought, according to my source, that Shadows would be doing better than Valhalla, and no, I am not kidding. Besides the abysmal pre-orders, the thing that actually spooked Ubisoft more than anything else was how Japan reacted to the one-legged Torigate figurine. Remember that that's the merchandise product where Yasuke and Naoe are standing on a symbol of Nagasaki getting the atom bomb dropped on them? Yet these characters take place in Japan, well before that even happens. And this culturally devastating piece that proved that Ubisoft was not adequate enough to make the game, or really know anything about the time period, it led to the higher-ups admitting defeat and demanding that the game get a cultural do-over, if you will. They wanted things to be more authentic because the one-legged Torigate incident was so embarrassing and baffling that they didn't want anything else like that to ever happen again in their history. So that's another big reason for you. As of now, from what I've been told, February 2025 is being chosen because Ubisoft believes there will be a AAA gaming drought around that time period. So they're hoping that they can capitalize by releasing Shadows then instead of November 15th, which was its original release date. Even though there are plenty of games coming around that time, like Monster Hunter Wilds will release in that same period, which makes me believe that Ubisoft will indeed push the game even further back than intended. One of the things for sure getting removed from Shadows, according to my sources, is indeed the rap hip-hop music for Yasuke. Apparently, Ubisoft brought out a questionnaire, and they were unanimously told that the rap music was tonally wrong and completely unneeded, and that it was actually offensive that Ubisoft believed Yasuke needed a hip-hop battle theme in a game that was set well before such music existed, and it was only implemented because Yasuke was black, so that's going to be gone for sure. They're also removing dialogue from the game that, according to my source, told me that it would actually enrage players if they heard it. I wasn't given concrete examples of what kind of dialogue, but the source assumed it may have been Yasuke saying some sort of socio-political pandering nonsense about how he was sold by white men or something, and that he hates white men and white supremacy must be abolished and such. They're also removing this because, of course, if that were in the game, it would absolutely be highlighted and used to detract even more people from supporting the game in the future. Also during development, one of the hardest things to implement for Ubisoft apparently was the parry system, according to sources. And allegedly, Shadows was also going to be the last game in the series that would feature the RPG-like gameplay mechanics that started in Origins, and that future releases would instead go back to what the series was most known for, which was more of an action-adventure style. Just look at Unity or, Assassin's Creed 2, that kind of thing instead. With stuff like the more timed combat of the original and such, and apparently the RPG stuff is very difficult to implement, and Ubisoft wants to lessen the load, as they say, in future games. I was also told that the next Assassin's Creed, which is called Hexi or Hex, which is set during the Salem witch trials, was being internally claimed, and get this, to be the gayest Assassin's Creed yet. I'm told that it only has a single female protagonist, and it's also the most fantastical Assassin's Creed yet. There will be lots of mysticism, and will also have, as they said, very striking visuals. I don't know if that means an entirely different art style or anything, but this is what I was told. It will still be an open world action game like the other ones, but from what I've been told, it is the biggest departure yet for the series. My sources claim that Hex or Hexy, whatever it's called, is very, very female power oriented. We are talking lots of lesbian relationships and female characters. It has witch covens and apparently very little masculine presence within the game. Although my source has told me that they believe that the game will be scaled down in the future and then made into a Liberation-esque game instead of a mainline title. If you know the one that had, the smaller games. Anyway, let's keep going. Mostly because Ubisoft does not have confidence that Hex will sell well at all, and this too was put into development when a lot of these pandering games were first being pitched or made. Internally, as I was being told, the developers behind Hex joked that the game will indeed piss off the fan base, but they wanted to make it anyway. I assume because the game is devoid of male characters, besides of course the ones you probably kill or hunt. And like I said, it's going to have borderline magic at this point in the Assassin's Creed series, so expect lots of weird Isu gobbledygook, I guess, as well, but that's what I was told about Hex so far. They also told me that there's not a chance in hell that Ubisoft doesn't go bankrupt, and that Ubisoft's backup plan, if they were to get a bailout or if things were to turn around so that they could actually, exist in the future and not just immediately cease all operations, would be to immediately shift all gears and then remake the original Assassin's Creed game, which is apparently not in development right now. And they also will pivot and just remake the entire Ezio trilogy as well in order to just garner goodwill and get the support from the players again. These sources also believe that Hex will likely never see the light of day, but if it does, they will be actually shocked if it's not cancelled or at the very least reduced dramatically in scope. I'm also told that many game studios are aware of Gamergate 2, and while they fear the implications of being caught in that war, that many studios have no desire or will to change their games to appeal to core audiences anymore. According to my sources, and this was one of the most damning allegations, so please listen carefully here, is that the game industry across plenty of studios will start to market their games as being devoid of identity politics and pandering almost completely. However, the actual content within these games in the future will not be altered or lessened in terms of identity political content, despite this tonal change in marketing. Simply put, many studios and publishers are still all in on DEI and wokeness in the future. Like, they are not changing that. And they still want you to consume this content whether you want to or not, but they will now sell you the games by marketing them to you to trick you into thinking that they're not woke, basically. And then you will buy it, and then sometime into these future experiences, all the wokeness, I guess, will reveal itself, and then you will be probably too far into these games in order to refund them, and then these studios and publishers will then make their money. I asked my sources if they were sure of this. They said that they were, and that this is damning. So it looks like we're about to be getting some 4D chess moves from the industry soon, so expect a lot of deceiving marketing tactics that will be tricking you into buying games that you wouldn't normally buy yourself. So if we didn't stay vigilant enough before, we definitely have to in the future, it seems. I was also told that Ubisoft internally wants to make games that will, as I wrote in my big info doc here that I'm referencing from, they want female characters to dominate the world and the games industry. Like, they want every game that they make to feature female protagonists in leading roles and lots of diversity, and little to no white men at all within lead roles anymore. They hoped that, according to my sources, that if they did this, that the game industry would all follow in suit. And this is basically being done because they want to erase masculinity from gaming altogether. I wish I was kidding, but hey, this is what my sources were telling me. So take that as you will, fellas. I was also told that the project that ruined Ubisoft was not actually Outlaws or Shadows. It was actually Skull and Bones. My sources told me they have seen multiple different versions of the game that were each completely different over the years. They said that they were told that the budget that was spent on Skull and Bones, it ranged somewhere from $650 to $850 million over 10 years. And that Skull and Bones failed so badly for Ubisoft, it was the actual reason why they're dying the way that they are right now. It's not actually Outlaws and Shadows, if you can believe it. So they sunk a legendary amount of resources into that game, and it clearly did not work out for them at all. They actually believed that Outlaws and Shadows would be the games to pull them out of financial ruin after what happened with Skull and Bones. So in terms of Star Wars Outlaws, and this is crazy, I was told that Ubisoft was devastated internally by the sales in response to Outlaws, and that they actually thought that they would make, and no, I am not kidding, they thought Outlaws would do, as my sources tell me, Red Dead Redemption 2 levels of profit. The game was actually internally being called during development as Red Dead Star Wars. They thought they had a mega multiple franchise spin-off series in the works that would change the industry for the better in their opinion. I was also told at one time that the original pitch for Outlaws was actually a Mandalorian game. So, Massive is the studio that made Outlaws. They also made the Division games too. Apparently, the original vision for Outlaws was the Division, but instead of agents, each player was their own Mandalorian instead. And there would be multiple Mandalorian families and crests, and you could swear your allegiance to whoever you wanted to. And the idea was to have this multiple world spanning galaxy, always online action RPG adventure game where you could tackle bounties and quests with your friends or by yourself as your own fully customizable Mandalorian. You could find new pieces of gear, like in the Division, and then swap out your guns for different stats and, make your own builds. And there would be endgame content where you and your friends could jetpack around and fight in third-person cover-based shooting like Division, but obviously it's Star Wars. This sounded amazing to me. I don't know why they didn't do it, but maybe it was too ambitious, I guess. And eventually Massive would then shelve the idea and instead went all in on Criminal Empire stuff, and then they reduced their vision of the game into a solo single-player game that you know now. Also, from its inception, Outlaws was always intended to have a female main character too. Originally, as I was told, Kay Vess was actually an Indian woman, but they eventually brought on Humberly Gonzalez to play the character, but Ubisoft internally didn't want Kay Vess to be fully Latina either. So they ended up with this weird mix of a character that they wanted to pass as vaguely every ethnicity possible, and that was actually intended by design. It was referred to, as my source said, as an omni-racial main character. So if you're wondering why Kay Vess doesn't look fully white, Latino, Asian, Black, whatever, now you know. They literally made the most ethnically ambiguous main character they could. Apparently Massive was chosen for Outlaws by Ubisoft because the Division game sold well, and they wanted to make Massive their new premier studio, so to speak. But like I said, originally, they wanted all of their games to star women of color or diversity, whatever, with little to no white men at all. This is why Shadows has Noway and no male option, and black characters, even male ones, are considered on par with importance to Ubisoft in terms of female representation or diversity. Black men are seen as a priority to push in franchises over white men too, according to what I've been told. So if you're wondering why everything they've made recently is so diverse and checks all the boxes, you're not being crazy, it's all being done by design. Also, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora was a massive loss for Ubisoft as well, but they saw the game more as a beta test for the Snowdrop engine, and for Massive to familiarize themselves with open world sandbox style games. And they were hoping that while Avatar failed, that they could use their newfound expertise and experience to turn their next game, which was Outlaws, into Ubisoft's Red Dead Redemption-like experience, which is still insane, but that's what they thought. They actually thought that Outlaws was as good as Red Dead internally. This is what I was told, man, but yeah, that is... oh god, that is crazy. Some more random things I was told was that Far Cry 6 broke even. It did make some profit, but it actually didn't perform the way that Ubisoft intended it to. And that their next games that are coming out, which I'm not allowed to say because my sources told me to not say them, they said the future games that Ubisoft has for 2025 and 26, assuming that, they make it that far, are even less impressive than Outlaws or Shadows, and based on what they were telling me about them, I believe them. There is a lot of slop coming in the future from Ubisoft, if they make it to those release dates. They also had some information on Ghost of Yotei, and they'll be giving me more in the future once they find more out. But apparently Ghost of Yotei blindsided many people that were working at Sony who were not made aware of what Sucker Punch was making. And that people in the mid-levels at Sony were actually confused when Yotei was announced because they were under the impression that Jin Sakai would be getting a sequel, and they are not happy at all when it comes to the response of that game either internally at Sony right now. Like I said, I should hopefully have more on Yotei eventually, but finally my source told me that Ubisoft has a massive labor problem right now, and that the actual workforce at their studios that they own are largely incompetent and full of diversity hires and women, which were hired in order to check boxes. Because many of these hires, according to the sources, were brought in to diversify the development teams. The actual talent level over at Ubisoft is apparently far lower than it was even 10 years ago. Most key talent has already left the company completely, and this has led to huge internal problems with dev teams and what they're making right now. There's apparently way too many junior level people and not enough seniors to teach them how to properly do things. And what ends up happening is that Ubisoft tends to outsource a lot of their development to other countries and their dev teams to help them, because the actual teams that Ubisoft has right now are really bad at their jobs. Apparently, this is what I'm told. My sources also told me that many of the things people like Grum say, or the things that I assume when I make my videos, are actually not bleak enough. And that the game industry in general is, as they said to me, on fire in every conceivable way, and things are so much worse internally than we even know right now. These sources also told me that the people they know from various studios ranging from all the usual AAA studios that you know of, that there is a massive, and I can't stress this enough, but a massive problem with witch hunting and identity politics in gaming. And that it's to the point where nobody can question anything, and there's a lot of what's being called these days in the news as toxic positivity, and this is absolutely 100% the case. If you're accused of not supporting the current narrative, you are being essentially torn apart as if you're living in a cult pretty much in these studios now. And that this toxic positivity has been getting referenced all over online, and it's literally killing games before they even come out now. If you're wondering why every game from Western studios seems to be pandering or putting women in them like crazy and so on, I'm told you're not crazy at all actually. In fact, you're just recognizing patterns that have been going on for a very long time at this point. My sources also told me that people within Western studios will oust you if you go against the narrative even remotely, and that this witch hunting is being used in order to usurp senior level talent so that new hires with little experience can actually crawl into these way more lucrative and powerful positions that they have no business being in the first place. And this has now led to more people like them who think the same way as them getting hired, and that this stagnation of talent and creativity is permeating all throughout a large amount of Western studios right now. So if you think the industry is cooked now, it's in fact far more worse apparently than you could even hope to imagine. But this is what I got for you so far. To reiterate, Yasuke was implemented solely due to identity politics. Black Lives Matter movements were an inspiration apparently for the character being included in the first place. He was not there originally. There was actually a fully completed Japanese male main character model somewhere in Ubisoft right now that they're not using. Ubisoft wants all their games to feature female protagonists, and they want the industry to completely reject white men in every single way. There's witch hunting across the entire industry. Outlaws was believed to be Ubisoft's Red Dead Redemption franchise in terms of quality and sales, and they were so deluded they actually thought it was going to be that. There's thousands of incompetent people in positions just wasting salaries and ruining your favorite games on purpose. Disingenuous marketing tactics will be implemented in the future to ensure you buy their games, but the actual content of said games will not be changing in any way. They are basically trying to own the chuds, as they would call it, and the Western industry for the most part are very, very, very identity politically driven right now, and there's no signs of it stopping anytime soon. Ubisoft will likely 100% go under no matter what, unless they are given some sort of bailout to operate at a limited capacity in the future, as I'm told. The only way that I can see this happening personally is either foreign investment or the Canadian government, since Ubisoft's main operations are in Canada, bails them out or something. Which means that my taxes could be used to save Ubisoft for a time, which radicalizes me like you don't even know, it makes my blood boil, but here we are. Assassin's Creed Hex, or Hexy, will be the gayest, most woman, lesbian-driven game ever conceived by Ubisoft yet, and it will be a girl power fantasy game unlike you've ever seen before, and Skull and Bones is a major reason why they're dying the way that they are right now. I think that about covers it. I will likely have more in the future, we'll see, but for now, that is plenty enough for one video, I think we can all agree. Please spread the word of what was said here. Maybe if more people see this video, more sources will then contact me in the future. If you have any info, please email me or DM me on Twitter. All of that info is in the description box below or in the pinned comment. Thank you for watching, subscribe, thanks to my patrons and members. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Don't worry, we'll get through this. Just keep playing your backlogs, and I'll see you soon.